Okay. All right. Oh my gosh, why does that? The second I touch it, sorry. Okay. All right. So the agenda today is welcome to our meeting today. Today we will go over the RCD Nexus Day Student Summary that we had at PEARC in PEARC22. We'll go over the summary of what we learned there, and then Anita will introduce herself and go over the Utah Student Program, and then I will go over the Purdue Student Program, and then we want to talk about our future efforts, go over the survey we want to send out to everyone, and then more importantly, talk about having other institutions do presentations and be involved. And then we'll just open it up for general discussion. So with that, we're going to start with the Nexus Day student summary. Anita, if you'd like to provide some updates on that.
Hi, my name's Anita Orendt. I'm from the University of Utah Center for High Performance Computing. Welcome all. So we thought we would start with a Nexus Day student summary, a summary of the Nexus Day student workforce development group for those that were there, but it was quite a while ago, and for those that weren't able to attend. So there were two tracks for the workshop, and one was a workforce development track. And during part of the day-long workshop, that workforce development track was then split into two sections, one dealing with student topics, student-centric topics, and the other dealing with staff. In the student workforce development breakout, we had a lot of discussions on what information would be useful for an institution that was looking to start up a student program, and also brainstorming on ways that we could gather this information from existing student programs. And we came up with three top priorities. One was to gather the information about successful student programs and find a way to present it so that people that are looking to start up a program or needed ideas on how to improve the program would have a single source of information that they could go to. One of the other topics that was recognized as a high priority was mentor development. A lot of the people that work in research computing really aren't, have never been trained in terms of being managers and mentors. And so what resources are there out there for mentor development? And then also ideas for establishing funding sustainability. Once you do have a program up and running, what are the funding models that exist? How can you look at existing funding models and see what will work for your program? So those were the top three priorities that came out of the discussions that we had during the student workforce development breakout sessions. And then the last item that we worked on during the workshop was coming up with a survey that we could send out to get people that have existing programs to answer the questions on the survey so that we can start gathering the results together in order to address that the first of the priorities, the information about successful student programs. And so we'll talk a little bit more about the survey later. So I think that's everything that I have to add about the Nexus Day workshops. Betsy, you were there. Is there anything I left out?
I think that summarizes most of it. And we'll go into detail, like Anita said, regarding the survey near our end of the presentation today. So moving on from that, the next thing we have up is each time we meet, or throughout the time we meet, we want to start to see if we can get institutions to do presentations like ours, just so we can see what other institutions are doing. So today we have Utah and Purdue. So Anita, if you want to go ahead and talk a little little bit about your student program at Utah.
Okay, so the student program that we have at the University of Utah is actually a program that is for all of IT, really. It is not a research computing centric student program. So the program goes by the name SUDO, Student University Development Opportunities, I think. And it's been around, and there's a link to the website. It's been around since about 2015. And the goal when the program was established was to provide a resource or a mechanism that students could augment what they were learning in the classroom with some real world type experiences. The program as a whole focuses heavily on providing hands-on experiences to the students, and also focuses heavily on mentoring. It is a multi-level mentoring where the program as a whole has a team of what they're called the SUDO leads that are students themselves, and then there is also the lead. Monty is his name. He's in that picture that's on this slide. So Monty runs the program for the university, and there are a set of SUDO student leads that work as mentors. They work as a go-between between the student and the mentor that student has in whatever program. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. As mentioned, it's a university ride. It's run through the university's central IT. And the research computing entity, the Center for High Performance Computing, is one of about 18 campus IT units which currently utilize the program. There currently are around 95 students in the program. And if you, we have statistics going back for the program since about 2018, there have been about 130 some odd program alumni since that date. We focus mostly on undergrads. There are some master's students, and it also depends on the exact needs of the given unit that's utilizing the program. But some of the highlights of the program are that they provide the centralized nature of this program handles a lot of the outreach at different clubs, career fairs, classes, and so forth. So they use this in order to work with the students at the university to make them aware of the program and how to apply to the program. And then there's a centralized application process. And as students apply to be considered for open positions, the SUDO leads do a pre-screening of all the candidates, and they have a process that they go through in order to then be able to match the candidates with some of the open positions. The student leads then work with the student and the mentors in having a monthly resync so that we keep in touch with the students that we're working with. And yes, we do meet with them more than just this monthly resync, but we have the monthly resync basically to track what the students are working on and make sure that the needs are being met both by the student and by the mentor. If you can go to the next slide. So now to focus in on what we do at CHPC, we currently, and these numbers were accurate for this summer, these are the slides that were used at the Nexus Day workshop. We have about 12 currently, and we've had about 46 since the start of the program, or since CHPC started to make use of the program, the SUDO program. We prefer to focus on undergraduate students, and the reason for that is we like it when we can get students in their first couple years of their academic program so that they have time to develop. And we've had success in that we can see the development and the skill set of the students improving, and they can get more and more complex projects. The students are able to work up to 19 hours per week during breaks and summers if they can work more hours. And we try to give the students a mix of some day-to-day operational tasks that they work on, as well as some long-term projects. We have students working with us at all different roles. Some work with the system staff, for instance. They do things like what we call node wrangling, troubleshooting and repairing of nodes, tracking warranty extensions, developing scripts that work with node health. And I'll talk about Arbiter here at the end in my last few minutes. We have students that work with our research facilitators. They help us with our documentation, newsletters. They've generated some how-to videos based on our documentation. They help moderate tickets. And then they do also have done some scripting projects. And for anybody that wants more information, I can go in some more detail of some of the scripting projects that we've had students work on. One success is the Arbiter, and I'll end with this, which was a project to monitor the usage on our interactive or login nodes. And it is a project, a code base that's now being used at multiple institutions. We had the students present at both a regional conference and then at the SC conference. There are other institutions have adopted the code to do this monitoring. So I think that's everything I have at this point. So turning it over to Betsy.
Okay. And then we'll take questions after we're done with the Purdue section. We can take questions, or if you want to start dropping questions into the chat area, Claire can also help us moderate some of those. So now we'll talk a little bit about Purdue University's student program. Hi, my name's Betsy Hillery. I'm the director for the Rosen Center for Advanced Computing here at Purdue. And you'll see our program is called Practice Experience. Preparing for advanced CI technology and innovation careers through experience. This is really at the heart of our program. What we really want to accomplish here at Purdue is take undergraduates and expose them to the research community, number one, but more importantly, give them an opportunity to think about being a full-time practitioner. What would that look like as they graduate from Purdue? And if we can help facilitate that for even one student, we feel like that's a really big success. Some of our background, we've had our program since 2003, 70 since 2003. I believe my numbers are off. And I want to pause for a second here because when I originally built this presentation, it was really around the research high performance computing students, where we have recently started rebranding our program to think more global, because we also have Envision Center, which represents our model simulations and modeling, and they do a lot of work in that area. So when we update our program, we will post this, but our numbers are will dramatically change from that. But we are really proud of our conversion rate to cyber infrastructure professionals. We have roughly a 22% hit rate on that, and currently we have 11 undergraduate students and 2 graduate students that for just this semester, and we will probably have additional students come spring. So we add students in as we have the need. Some of the projects we've done so far this year have been really research, software engineering, data science. We had some of our students compete in the Student Cluster Challenge competition. They've also worked, those same students worked in the data center throughout this time to try to get hands-on experience working on brand new hardware that we had coming from Dell. So again, these students are able to see bleeding edge type technology, and then they get to deploy that into a competition. As Anita mentioned, our students also do a fair amount of hardware repair. We depend on them to be able to do that troubleshooting, so we don't have to hire a full-time person to actually make that happen. A lot of our students, we consider novice systems administration. So if you're on here from our systems, the CaRCC systems track, system facing track, you'll notice in the last couple months, we've been talking about what does it take to be a novice system administrator, sorry. And what we've really been focusing on here at Purdue is taking some of that output and figuring out how do we bridge that gap so our novices, say our seniors that are getting ready to graduate, they can already be considered a novice in their field. And then that really helps their experience as they're going job hunting. And we're actually really proud when our students do leave Purdue because they go to really amazing places. And the other thing that we've really started doing, which I'm really, really excited about, is we're doing even less technical things. We're having some of our students build out our Anvil communication and outreach, and just in communication in general. I have one student that's really been working hard to help us build out our student handbook and our mentoring handbook, which we'll talk about as one of the products Purdue would like to donate and donate back to the cause here. We'd like to be able to produce some of those documents for people to use in future for your own programs. Our students work roughly 20 hours a week. We actually gear it more toward what does the student have to do in their real life, because their real job here is to graduate from Purdue. So we really work with the student, but most students work roughly 20 hours. And then of course, during dead week and up to finals, we expect students that don't work at all. One of the unique things I think that we've started to do is for about 2 semesters, 3 semesters now, at the end of the semester, we actually have a poster session here on campus. Anyone who's on campus can come and participate. And we actually ask all of our ITAPs, so our larger organization, we've actually asked some of those students to come and present their posters as well. But this really gives us an opportunity for our students to showcase the work, the impact they've had in our community. And it brings along our CIO attends it, some of very high level people on campus come to see it. And that really gives the campus then insight to what research computing has produced for them in the last semester. So we're really proud of that project. And now I want to move on to and talk a little bit about our mentoring program. So our mentoring program, basically for each student that we have, we'd like to have a mentor that helps them. Sometimes when we have 2 students doing the same kind of project, they might have one mentor, but the mentor's responsibilities is really to execute our student handbook. And it talks a lot about diversity, equity, inclusion. How do you grow your student? How do you prepare them for real life experiences? It talks about how to do project management, how to teach students to do project management, how to communicate their efforts, all of these things, that skills that as you become a full-time practitioner that you really need to know. They're also there for technical assistance. They also help them guide them through the poster session. And we really expect those mentors to spend roughly 4 hours a week with those students, talking about their program, their projects they have, talking about difficulties a student might have. And we really want to have those mentors plugged into the larger community of Purdue. So if we see a student at risk, we work with the university to make sure that those students are being taken care of. So it's kind of their home away from home. And we really look for those mentors to make them feel like they're part of the university. In 2022 summer this year, we did an REU that focused on some students from Indiana University and Purdue, and it largely worked on our NSF Anvil project. And we really they did some benchmarking and some other very technical projects that ended up being able to deploy to all of our other clusters. So we're really excited about that. And for 2023, we will also have another REU. And if you have students that are interested in that, please reach out to us, and I'm happy to post our flyer regarding that. One of the other initiatives we want to think about, though, for Purdue is how do we engage all of your universities, whether you're large or small. We'd really like to have more collaboration among universities. It would be amazing for us to be able to send our students to your university, and maybe your students come to our university during the summer or any time that it makes sense, so we can start getting a lot of cross-pollination. One of the reasons we're really excited about doing this is because as we started working with Indiana University, it was really amazing to see this group of students that didn't know each other. All of a sudden, they're checking with each other. They're asking, hey, you know, what are you doing this weekend? So building those bridges across the country would be a really big initiative for us to. It would be really proud for us to make sure we did that. And then future things we want to do is we're working on, oh, I'm sorry. This is our future slide. I'll pause a second. Is there any questions that Anita and I can answer about our programs? I talked really fast, which I do when I'm excited, so I apologize. Do we see any questions in the chat or any general questions? You can unmute if you have questions.
Hi, I do have a question, Betsy. Thank you for your presentation, and thank you, Anita, too. The question that I have right now is, how do you go about, I don't know if we can start talking about how do you go about the funding for a way to pay out the students. Right now, the University of Virginia, we're actually working in a program with a research computing team where we want to get off the ground student program, internship program for the students at UVA. And right now, one of the difficulties that we found is, you know, the funding, right? How you go about requesting the funding to be able to pay the students.
Anita, do you want to talk about your funding model first?
Well, I was going to ask you the same question, Betsy.
Okay. Yeah, well, I can talk about our funding model. So our organization is committed to a bottom line. So about 4 or 5 years ago, I went to my current boss and said we really wanted to get a sound program off the ground, and we budgeted. It's a line item in our budget. Sometimes it's about $50K a year. It depends on the year, but beyond that, getting your so if you want to talk about we could develop a statement for you that could help build that sales pitch. But beyond that, we also look for grants. So specifically, we're looking for solicitations that mention workforce development, and we're trying to utilize some of those workforce development solicitations to figure out how do we fund grad students, how do we fund undergrad students. And then beyond that, we also have partnerships that we have on campus. We're working with faculty and researchers, and when they have a gap or a need on campus, they come to us and we actually sell our students as part of that services. So we build that right into our proposals. Specifically in the Envision Center, they've been doing this for roughly 10 years or longer, but they really have a great model where they're a part of a recharge center and they employ students, and then they go out and solicit projects on campus, and they work with faculty to make that happen. And then we're able to charge that back to our recharge center. So those are like 3 main areas. If Laura or anyone else from Purdue is on, if you want to unmute and add anything to that, feel free to do that. I'll pause for just a second.
I think you covered it pretty well, Betsy. Hits, I think, all the points of funding.
Thank you, Laura. Laura's my accountability partner. Anita, I don't know.
Yeah, so at Utah, the program as a whole does have the buy-in from the leadership in our central IT, both on campus, and we also have a health sciences campus, and they have their own central ITS versus central IT. But anyway, so it's getting, but I'm not the person really that worked on it at that level, so I don't know what what arguments were made, but there is buy-in at that level. And I know Tom Cheatham was on the call or is on the call, and he may have some more insight on that, being part of the IT leadership. But anyway, so there's the buy-in at that level to support the Monty, the person who's running the program, and also what we call the student leads. Then beyond that, each of the different areas like CHPC just work with their normal budget in order to fund the students and to get student lines added to our budget. And with some of the work output of the students, the students, of course, are much cheaper than a full-time employee. And yes, they do take time from the full-time employees to act as a mentor and so forth, but we've had some really productive students. More recently, we've also been exploring the use of the work study funds when applicable, and building that into the program so that we, start that at the beginning. When we find the students, if they're eligible for the work study, making sure that we're using those funds to help support our students. But as I said, that's as much as I know. Tom, I don't know if you're still on and want to
I think you
contribute
hit
more.
it on the head. Really, these are cheaper employees than full-time employees, and we do it for workforce development. And I think we've hired 85 of our students permanently into central IT and research computing roles. And so that's been very effective, because hiring people right now is incredibly difficult. We don't pay well at a university compared to industry. And to get people that actually know what they're doing, if we can train them from freshman year up so that they're ready for the job when they go, it's fantastic. Or we train them for workforce development for the larger community, for industry or elsewhere. That's still a worthwhile effort.
Yeah.
And it's an aside to the funding. We do really encourage our students to apply for internships. And, this summer, they probably aren't going to have as many opportunities, but we've had students go to Microsoft, Google.
Right, and they come back with new ideas for my staff. And so it's a building up everybody. It's been a win-win. So we love the program. It does take time of the mentors to do this. It's also hard to take a technical system administrator and have them mentor a student. They don't know how to do that. It's not in their skill set. So everyone learns out of this and grows, gets better. Yeah. So it's been a fun program. So how do we fund it? We didn't get extra funding. We're just salvaging funding from our existing budget.
Thank you, Tom and Anita. Hopefully that answered the question, but one of the notes I took is maybe one of our future products is funding models, how universities do that, and what's in it for me statement. How do we help universities provide that, so as they're going after programs to build programs, we help them in that process. Very good. Any other additional questions? I can't see the chat, so if there are questions, if someone could please read them.
Well, I can just read that Patrick just made. Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Anita.
Okay. Patrick just added a comment that they sold it as a means of saving on FTE salaries. You could find the students to do the work. And once you train up the students, especially if you keep them long term, they do become very productive members of your staff, even if they're only working 20 hours a week. So Claire,
I actually have a question. Can you talk a little bit about how you develop your program around the flexibility needed for student, because they're 20 hours a week and they have finals and they have projects, and also succession planning. When you give your students responsibilities, that then when they leave, obviously when they move on, how do you do the succession? Students training other students. How do you have some plan, or do you have something how you deal with that?
Okay, I can go first on this one. We are, as Betsy stated, and we really do emphasize this with our students. They are students first, and they need to be successful in their student career. And so whenever they're feeling overwhelmed, they have finals, projects, we're very, very flexible. And one of the reasons you can have the flexibility is we don't have the students doing anything that's, mission critical type thing, or doing anything that one of the, our full-time staff can't do if the student, I'll use the example of the node wrangling. Yes, we have full-time staff that can do that. Yes, they do push a lot of that off onto the students. And again, a lot of it isn't mission critical, but if we, have a node done and the owner of that node is really pushing, one of our full-time staff will take over and do it if the student is tied up with finals or whatever. They're students first. They have to be successful students, and we don't want them to be overwhelmed and really, have the mindset that they can't ask for time off, or they can't, just basically the day before or even that morning, hey, I've got to put more time into this project, so I won't be in today, is usually enough of a contact. Now, in terms of succession, it really depends what they're working on. But yes, we do. And I will use the example right now. I've been working with one of our student employees who's actually a communications major, and she's been focusing on our newsletter and our website and documentation. And I know she'll be ending in May. And I have another student that's doing a mix of things. She's actually a freshman engineering major. And but she is interested in some of the communications aspects, the documentation, and so on this next newsletter, for instance, they're going to work together. So we'll have it. And we also have students try to do what we call an exit document that sort of says, this is what I've done. It depends. If they've only been here a short time, it may not be necessary, but we had a student who was here. He started working for us the summer before his freshman year, and he worked until the end of his senior year when he left for grad school. And he created a nice exit document on all his different projects. And so, yeah, we do stress that just like when you're in the workforce, when you do something, you do want to document what you've done, and hopefully provide enough information that somebody else can also do what you did, let's say, how we install programs or whatever it is. So that exit document really does help. And as I said, we do try to get overlap when we know students are leaving. That's not always possible, but does that answer everything you asked, Claire?
Yes, thank you.
Betsy, I don't know if you have anything additional based on your program.
Yeah, so the only thing, so we think about it similar, and I'm going to have Laura talk a little bit about how they do it in the Envision Center in just a second. But really, our succession planning is we try to hire incoming freshmen. We usually look for freshmen to sophomores to actually get them into the program. And we try to stagger that. So we're always having students coming in each year. So we're always having the older students training the younger students. So in terms of like building that succession planning, we really don't have much downtime in terms on the HPC side, because we always try to hire in early and then work with them through the 4 years. So that's sort of our way of doing that. Laura, do you want to add anything to that, since the Recharge Center works slightly different?
Yeah, I think it's very similar. We try to impress upon the students that their physical and mental health comes first, their academics, and then work is always last. We do have projects, that cross over from when they graduate. And so we always try to make sure that we're constantly having those mentor and mentee meetings to stay on top of the workload. Grad students, engaging with the undergrads, and similar to what Betsy said, we try to hire students as freshmen or sophomores to keep them long-term. And we've been lucky enough to where a lot of our students stick around as grad students as well. So we get a few extra years of their expertise and experience in that regard as well. But just really making sure that we keep on top of their graduation date, things like that, so that we can make sure that we're having those debrief meetings on specific projects and having that documentation. We always do an exit interview with the student, whether they're graduating or whether they're just having to move on to other things, whatever the reason may be. But that seems to be really important, is to make sure having that debrief meeting before they leave, just to make sure everything's covered and we know what's happening. So.
Okay, very good. With about 20 minutes left, I would like to pivot to the future. If we have additional questions regarding our programs, we can do that in the end. So Anita, would you like to go over a little bit about the survey that we currently have put together, where it's at, and what our plans are?
Yep, thank you, Betsy. one of the outcomes of the Nexus Day workshop, and I'll give a shout out to Scott Coughlin from Northwestern. He actually sat there as we were talking about this and put together the beginnings of the Google Doc survey. So we've taken that, we've worked on it a little bit, and right now the status is we're running it through the University of Utah's institutional review board to make sure we don't have to, we make sure we're okay to send it out. And we're in that process. They've asked for a little more feedback, but I hope to give them this week. And hopefully we'll have a survey that we can submit early next year. So the survey itself is really a long form and a short form. And so the beginning just says, do you have a program, and go on and fill it out. And so this is going to be sent to all the various CARC mailing lists, and I'm sure we'll find other mailing lists to send it to. And then the first one is the short section. And this should only take, I'm guessing, somewhere around 10 minutes or so to complete. It's a short answer where you say what your institution is, a contact person for the student program, whether or not there's a website for the program, when did you start, how many students, how many students through history of the program, do you focus on undergrad, graduate, or both? What roles do students do? How long do they work? What is the workload on the full-time employees? Their time to have an effective student program. And then, a short description of your program. And then you're asked if you want to continue on to the long form that goes into some more topics that are going to take more time to fill out, like how do you recruit students? How do you interview them? How do you, the funding models and so forth, onboarding, training, more details about projects and mentoring of the model. So that's pretty much the gist of the flow of the survey. And as I said, hopefully shortly after the beginning of the year, we can get that sent out and start gathering this information together. And similar to how there was a question earlier, I think it was from Gladys about funding. Hopefully from the responses to this survey, we'll have other ideas that might be applicable to your institution.
And so that kind of goes right into our next topic, which we want that survey really to drive our future meetings. So if we find organizations, institutions that have an amazing student program, or even just want to talk about their student program, this will help us identify those institutions. But more importantly, if we see a gap, so for instance, if everyone signals that, hey, we have no idea how to do a funding model to support this, then that might be a gap in a product that this group could long-term help facilitate. And so with that, we want to make sure so we also have our staff and the student initiatives going on, and we're going to be alternating our students. So this month was the student one, next month will be the staff one. And I think that that Claire and Tim will talk a little bit about that maybe at the end, but we want this, and we will also have, that should say, joint meetings with common topics. So for instance, workforce development is definitely a cross topic between students and staff. So how do you build your workforce? Where does that workforce come from? You can consider your students as a different kind of workforce, but it's the same thing. So we really want these future meetings to be driven by topics that come from meetings like this. This is also if you're interested in doing a presentation on your institution, please sign up. There's a volunteer, there's a section to have your name and institution name, but if you please want to just say, I'd love to do a presentation on our institution, we would really love for you to do that. And then the last area is what topics are interesting to you. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let's have a little bit more of a conversation about what do we want to see in this meeting, and what topics do you want us to attack immediately, and more importantly, who wants to be involved so we can reach out to you and do more detailed information. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Okay. Hopefully, let's just do this. Okay, did it stop sharing by chance? Okay.
It did.
Okay. So this is where it's open discussion.
And I was just going to add, there's a question from Gladys in the chat. Do you have different time tiers for the internships? I'm not. Go ahead.
I can repeat the question if that is okay. I guess what I mean with that, you and Betsy already have programs that is established. So when you go about looking for the students, do you have like different levels, let's say, of internship that you have to offer, like 3 months, 6 months, and that goes attached directly with the kind of project they're going to be working on? Or are the students able to choose what they want to be working on, or do they decide for how long they want to participate in the program?
So ours is driven slightly different. What we do internally is we have a long list of projects that we need to get accomplished. And what we do is we post on our website, we're looking for these kind of students. And then we interview those students and try to align them with the projects we have. Normally our projects now are running by semester. And if it goes beyond a semester, then we try to make it, though, it completes by the end of the semester, although Laura's projects end by end date. But then we also offer internships over the summer. So it's sort of like a workforce program during this academic calendar year. And then over summer, we do very small, deliberate projects so they can be successful. But the real goal is to finish the project. So if it's scoped to be a really large project, we would probably deliberately make that happen over an entire calendar year.
And I can just, at Utah, we really don't, we do hire students with a particular role in mind. It's going to be systems involved, systems facing. And so we look for a skill set that will apply, and an interest from the student that will apply to that. They want to get their hands on the equipment. And that really is driven by the day-to-day. And then upon that, we have projects, and they come and go. Projects are all different lengths. And we really don't hire a student for a given project necessarily, but just for a specific role. And then as they work over multiple, hopefully multiple years, they can work on a project. Maybe they'll finish it. They'll pick up something else, and it just is. And it's similar to what we do as a full-time employee. We have our base, tasks that we have to do, but we also are, at least the way we work at Utah. We also are tied into projects that we have for the center, and we play a specific role on that project for as long as that project is around. And so, so we don't, hire a student for a given project, and then when that project's over, and have the student, reapply or whatever for a project. If that makes sense, Gladys.
Yes, it does, Anita, and thank you so much for that. The reason why I asked the question is because if we want to put it in terms that, it's a cheaper, the labor, right, is cheaper. So I wonder, are the students also involved when they come into the program, that they're involved in the, day-to-day tasks that a regular research computing team will, have to perform, like tickets, for example? Do they get to do that?
It depends on what role they were played in, but yes, the students that work with the research facilitators do tickets. They do the moderation of the tickets, where they assign them to the appropriate group. And over time, they learn enough that they can start answering some of the tickets. But that is a role. But we know it's not interesting to, spend 20 hours a week dealing with tickets. So, somebody that's 20 hours a week, we may ask them to put like 4 hours towards focusing on tickets. And then they'll have other things that they're working on to do it. And it's the same way with the, the repairing and node wrangling, the repairing of hardware, checking the nodes that have gone down to see what, is there a hardware failure? Do they just need rebooted? Again, that's a portion of what they do.
Thank you so much, Anita.
So thinking about future topics, I know Anita mentioned 3 in the summary. Are there additional topics that the, and it could be a student or a staff, so we're not going to limit it to staff or student only type topics, but are there immediate topics people would like to hear about that we can get on the list? So far I heard funding models plus the 3 we talked about. I don't know if there are different topics people would like to hear about that we can start helping address. Oh, okay. Maybe not. And then Tim or Claire, do you want to mention a little bit about what we're doing in January?
Sure. So similar to the format here today, we'll want to go over the staff report, the summary of the RCD Nexus Day on the staff side, on the breakout that we had during that workshop, where Susan Ivy has agreed to talk about her staff program. It's kind of interesting at NC State. Susan is in the library, so it is a little bit different, but it's very interesting and very innovative. So we've asked her to present. We were supposed to have her present at the Nexus Day workshop, but we kind of ran out of time. We had 4 people present during the Nexus Day. But we also would like to begin to gather people's the descriptions of their staff programs or their workforce programs. And then we want to open it up for a discussion following on from the workshop where we came up with some working groups. So as you remember, the structure within CARC is interest groups are really discussion based and idea development, ideation, and working groups really have deliverables in mind, so it can be a very specific time frame. And so on the staff side, we have identified a few things that already we'd like to move into working groups. And we talked a little bit about priority. Well, we want to reset that, and we want to make sure that we're still in agreement with those, and we want to move that forward and start those.
So wrapping up with about 8 minutes left, do we have any questions, discussion? This is open discussion. Any questions from anyone or any additional input from the team that presented today? Okay. I guess, Tim, we can stop the recording and end the meeting.
Looks like we have a question from Gladys.
Okay.
Is anyone here currently working on a proposal to develop a student program? That would be a really interesting kind of a working group if you could develop a framework so people could just pull out a template on how to put together a proposal for a student program. That would be a cool thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't want to ask the question live because I've been asking too many questions already.
Is there anyone working on a proposal for a student program that hasn't talked already? Because we could, Gladys, I think we could take that as a carry away. I think that's a good idea. Again, that goes back to what's the pitch, what's in it for me kind of thing.
It looks like Gladys Sanamatsu is also interested in that. Gladys, where are you from? What?
Yeah. Yes, I am from the University of Virginia, and I see the message from Paula.
Paula, what institution are you with?
I'm at Harvard University with the Faculty of Arts and Sciences. We don't have a student program, so I'm here to learn. But I was wondering, if we were to do it, what do we have to do?
Right.
Yeah, it sounds like a working group will be great. we are just in the baby steps right now of, okay, what are the things that we need, what we need to consider. And, I think that will be a good way to start.
Looks
Okay.
like there's thumbs up from Karsten as well, from UVA. So
That's awesome. I think that's a really good topic.
And feel free to bring these conversations to the list as well. It's meant to be a discussion list. So if you want to continue these conversations, whether it be the proposal writing or anything else, the list is open for discussion as well.
As we're ending, I just will mention that, on the CARC website, there is a page for the Staff and Student Workforce Development Interest Group. And while it's not there at the moment, now that we've had this first call, we will have a table of past presentations, past calls, and links to the recording and the notes will be available there for the calls as we move forward.
Just so y'all know, Christopher Simmons says he's working on a proposal for the cyber training call. That's a student program.
Okay. With that, I guess we can hang on if there's any questions, or we can stop the recording and end the meeting.